Hi everyone, and welcome to RPG Horror Stories with DnD Doge. In today's video, we have a story about how a months-long, interesting Dungeons & Dragons campaign is ruined by the Dungeon Master. A story about how a Call of Cthulhu game never even starts due to some of the players eating way too many edibles, and much more. So without further ado, let's get right into these RPG horror stories. Nothing Mattered. Submitted to the DnD Doge subreddit by Reddit user Delta Gear Advanced. Hello Doge. Say hi to Lucky for me.
Hi, Lucky.
And sorry for the long read. Even though a lot more happened in this game, I wanted to stick to the things that really bothered me. This all starts around the start of the year when I joined a homebrew game with an already established group to fill in my weekend, wanting to be a player as I am a forever DM for my group earlier in the week. I make my character a human chronergy wizard and join the party of a barbarian, warlock, rogue, later a rogue wizard as we built a bond in character, and a fighter barbarian. For the most part, everything is fine for the first handful of sessions. There's plenty of cool combat, political intrigue, a rebellion, and the threat of an undead army. But then things started getting weird. Enemies started succeeding on all of my spell saves, making me waste spell slots for a few sessions as nothing seems to work. I swapped to using more buff spells like haste, and suddenly enemies are eating opportunity attacks, running past our two frontliners to get at me, resulting in more than a few combats where I spend more time running or being downed. We're talking ranged enemies also jumping from high ground to get angles at me in combat when my turn hadn't even come up yet. Yeah, that does kinda sound like the DM is targeting OP for some reason. We level up, and I start using the Find Familiar spell to do scouting and assisting the party, trying to make myself less of a target because I'm tired of being downed in combat. Suddenly, buildings have anti-magic orbs that delete my familiar in towns or cities, and when we end up in combat, my familiar is sniped by enemies that we can't even see yet. Yep, no denying it. This sounds like blatant targeting. Things get worse as we delve more into the story and as the game goes on. We find out about a powerful mage / lich / goddess who wants to wipe out all life and needs to have all of her body parts released from sealed boxes hidden in churches across the land, which 5 high-level demon generals who apparently work for her are after, trying to revive her to full power. Huh. Sounds like the DM is taking some inspiration from Castlevania 2, which is underrated in my opinion. These demons are powerful, have tons of high damage, area of effect attacks akin to fireballs, and nothing they throw out are spells, meaning I can't counterspell all the damage being thrown at us, resulting in our first encounter going badly and nearly resulting in a TPK, had our warlock not have an item to teleport us all out. We spend the next few in real life months of sessions trying to learn about the demons and finding powerful magic items so we can get stronger and get higher levels so we can hopefully face them again. Our next encounter goes better, but now the demons have some kind of curse that if you get hit by any of their attacks, it makes you vulnerable to all damage, making our two frontliners glass cannons that me and the warlock have to burn tons of spell slots to keep alive. Worse still, the curse can't be cured by any party member or cleric we can find, forcing us to wait till the end of a long rest to make the save again, to hopefully pass it and not be made of glass for a whole session. It's starting to sound like this DM has a bit of a DM versus player mentality. After the second encounter with the demons, they now not only have an army of undead, but also have some kind of link with our warlock, letting her track their general distance and direction from us. But apparently, they may be able to do the same, as when we try to follow or track them, they keep changing direction and avoiding us. We play Wild Goose Chase for a few months more of in-real-life sessions, trying to stop them from collecting the body parts, but nothing we do matters as they reach towns and cities before us, raze them to the ground, get a body part, and then just leave. If we try to fight them, they'll just nuke us with tons of damage until we have to retreat. If we start doing well and we get them on low HP, the demons just turn tail and run faster than we can keep up with, and just go off and heal, resulting in multiple sessions of pointless fighting because they just run away and we waste resources. Eventually, we decided to hold up in one of the locations where we know a body part is that they have not gotten yet. It was underground, had only one entrance, and we spent tons of time planting traps and spell combos to hopefully kill them, or at least hold them off. They get there, and tons of undead swarm down the entrance. Me and the warlock are firing off spells, barbarian and the fighter are blending away, and the rogue is sniping at large targets. This goes on for multiple rounds before I get suspicious and take a turn to move over to the next room to check on the sealed box. Unsurprisingly, one of them demons is literally melting through the ceiling above the box, trying to get to it. I grit my teeth but cast Force Cage on the box, hoping it can stall things out, as I had expected something like this to happen in some capacity. The session ends a turn or two after that, with the demons almost breaking through, and then I missed the next session. The session after that, I come back to one more demon dead, and the body part released as the Dungeon Master apparently hand-waved a large passage of time and other stuff so that the demons could release it, having the one that died literally kamikaze itself in to break the seal, and the rest retreating again as soon as the seal is broken. A party member, the rogue, also died that session, having been snuck up on by one of the demons and nuked to death due to the vulnerability to all damage curse. There were lots more of minor things that also built on top of this, but it was after that session that I politely told the DM that I was not having fun, and it really felt like the party had no agency in the world or any events that happened, and I left the game at that point. Other highlights include a rebellion leader who was immortal and was constantly a thorn in the party's side, dealing with 9th level capable casters who showed up from time to time, while we were only level 5, who basically shut me and the warlock down, counterspelling everything we did, getting tons of magic items that ultimately were not helpful and were just minor stat increases. Not helpful, as I got stuff that boosted my spell DC to 20 plus by level 10, yet everything still kept passing my saves. Same with the warlock. All in all, it was not a fun time, and personally, I don't feel like joining that DM's game again anytime soon. TLDR, a DM slowly made all of our party's choices pointless. Every villain gets away. My abilities and spells are targeted in ways to make them useless in and out of combat, and ultimately, I end up leaving after sessions of no progress, no matter what we did. Yeah, it definitely sounds like that Dungeon Master was stringing the party along on a pretty tight railroad. It's pretty obvious that the DM had no intention of letting the party succeed in preventing the demons from getting any of the body parts that they needed to resurrect the Lich, probably due to the DM wanting that to be the BBEG by the end of the campaign. And I can see how having defeat after defeat could start to wear the party out a bit. Perhaps the Dungeon Master could have still had the Lich be resurrected without all of the body parts needing to be released, but just be a little weaker when the party confronts her. Overall, OP did the right thing here. He was no longer having fun, so let the DM know why he was leaving, and went the no D&D is better than bad D&D route. Though, what do you all think on this one? Did OP do the right thing? In what ways could the Dungeon Master have gone in order to make the game more fun for the group? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Also, before we move on to the next post, if you're enjoying the video, I have to ask that you give it a like, as it does help out the video a lot. Heck, if you could even share the video on your social media. That really helps, as YouTube likes when people find videos by clicking links from sites like Facebook or Twitter. And yes, Twitter. I'll never call it X. If not for me, then why not do it for Nipsey?
Yes, I like it when you like and share the video.
How can you resist that face? But with all that said, let's find out what happens when someone eats too many edibles. Call of Cthulhu and the Never-Ending Vomit Night by Reddit user JackWeber85. Okay, figured I'd finally throw my hat in the ring with one of my few in-person games, and the worst game session I've had so far. I had some coworkers who heard I liked tabletop RPGs, and they wanted to try. So we had made plans to get sodas, snacks, and play Call of Cthulhu at the player's house. The characters for this story, with names changed, of course. We have Susan, Susan's boyfriend Daryl, and Philip. I was picked up from work by Daryl and Philip. We got our snacks and arrived at Susan's and Daryl's home. Come to find out, Susan actually made a full-on meal of pastas, fruits, cheeses, the works, and even got some beers. So I sat down and started explaining the game as we ate. Meanwhile, the two guys are drinking sodas. As it progressed, they're getting a bit more giggly and get out some gummies. They mentioned that they got some edibles before the game, and come to learn that the soda had THC. I thought, no biggie, I've dealt with stoned players in online games. Well, Philip had never done edibles, so as I'm trying to walk them through it, he's getting dumber and dumber. Phil rolls a d6 for a stat and says, "I got an effing 9, F yeah." I look over the screen and facepalm and say, "That's a 6, you dumbass." The die was upside down for him. I get up and go to the bathroom and hear him mumbling. Upon walking out, this man is full-blown puking into a trash can and is barely able to speak. Daryl is chuckling, barely able to speak as well. Meanwhile, me and Susan are both pissed because now I had to stay the night, because the plan was I was gonna run the game and then get a ride home. Because it was too cold and too far to walk and too late in the night to try and get a ride elsewhere. They didn't have a spare bed, and the couch was for both the stoners to sleep on. So I am on the chair that barely is suitable for sitting. To top it all off, they steam cleaned that day, so the air was humid with the smell of chemicals, dog urine, and now vomit. Needless to say, I didn't sleep. I got a ride home when Susan went to work at 6 a.m. because thankfully she worked down the road from my home, and I haven't been over or played with them since. Yeah, I would have been a bit peeved as well, as OP put all the effort of putting a game together to play with his coworkers, only for them to get super wasted before they could even play the game, especially with Daryl doing so, knowing that he was supposed to give OP a ride home after. Some people just don't realize that when you eat edibles, it's entirely different than smoking. and it sounded like Philip found out the hard way. Though, looking on the bright side, at least OP had a nice home-cooked meal, courtesy of Susan. But I can understand why OP hasn't tried to run a game for them since. Let's move on to another Call of Cthulhu story. Player deliberately torpedoes the climax of a year-long Call of Cthulhu campaign. By Reddit user Dr. Talk. I was a player in a group that was running through one of Chaosism's epic Call of Cthulhu campaigns. One of my fellow players, let's call him Monk, seemed to get a tremendous amount of pleasure from needling the other players, in particular, me. Sadly, he was a childhood friend of the Game Master, so never got called out for his behavior. He also had a subtle way of attempting to sabotage other player characters and mess with the tone of the campaign. Again, no attempts to address this ever got past the Game Master. Still, we stuck at it and eventually got to the climax of the adventure, in which the heroes needed to prevent the launch of a rocket carrying an unstable nuclear device. All the player characters were pretty beaten up at this point, so we set up a concealed camp on the bad guy's island and agreed to rest before engaging the enemy. Monk said that his character would take first watch, which honestly should have let us all know that something was up, as he'd never done anything for any of the other heroes before. Our player characters go to sleep, and the Game Master takes Monk aside. 10 minutes later, they come back, and Game Master says, "You're all dead." After some protests from the other players, the Game Master and Monk explained that, once we were all asleep, Monk's player character had snuck into the enemy base and attempted to destroy the dangerously unstable nuclear device by hitting it with a sledgehammer. The resulting explosion destroyed the island, the bad guys, and us. Monk thought this was hilarious. A full year of gaming, literally up in smoke. The Game Master just shrugged the same way he did every time his friend did something to F up the game. We all knew there was a high possibility that our characters would not survive. It was Call of Cthulhu, after all. But this felt like a slap in the face, especially with the way that Monk was yucking it up. I never played with them again. Man, that had to have stung a bit. Spending a year in a campaign, only for one asshat to ruin the game by doing something stupid. But the Game Master isn't without blame here, as he facilitated that behavior, and by the sounds of it, would always take Monk's side on things, simply due to them being childhood friends. So I don't blame OP at all for never playing with that group again, because, like with D&D, no Cthulhu is better than bad Cthulhu. Let's move on to the next post. Player kept bringing joke characters to a serious campaign. By Reddit user Karina135. An acquaintance of mine wanted to join my D&D campaign, and the other players didn't mind, so we took him in. I told him that we don't play in the often typical comedic style, but have a serious tone instead, and asked him for a character idea. He suggested a halfling thief who had to leave his Shire-like location because nobody would put up with his stealing anymore. It sounded fine enough, though when we started playing, it turned out he didn't mention that his thief was blind, and as such, is terrible at stealing. I told him that that's a joke character, and that he can't be blind, so he played him seeing for the session, and then wanted to switch characters. I found that agreeable, and he said he would play a wizard who had been basically kidnapped as a child by an evil wizard who wanted a student, but had run away from abuse. Then, the next round, it turned out that his wizard was somehow illiterate and could not use spell scrolls. I told him that that's still a joke character, and that he can't be illiterate, so he wanted to switch again into a dwarf fighter. I thought I'd be cautious and asked if there was anything debilitating about this character, but he said no. There wasn't, but as we played again, it turns out his dwarf fights with a 2.5 meter longsword by spinning around like a spin top. At this point, I told him that he won't fit into our campaign and asked him to leave, which kind of ended the acquaintanceship too. Yeah, I think that OP probably made the right call here. Making 3 jokey type characters after OP stated specifically that this campaign had a serious tone and instructed the player to make a character that would fit that just showed that the player would not take the game seriously. It is a shame that it ended the acquaintanceship, but OP did kick him out by politely stating that OP just didn't think that the player would be compatible with the campaign. Though, what do you think? Did OP make the right call here? Or do you think they were a bit too harsh? But with that said, let's move on to today's final post. Is this normal D&D behavior, or really rude? By Reddit user Snakewings. I had never played before at all, total noob, but I wanted to learn because all my friends play, and it was the only way to hang out regularly. These people have known each other for several decades and have been gaming together for most of that time, while I only came into the picture recently. They brought me into their campaign somewhat in the middle, though I never really got the story. From my character creation onward, everyone else was making decisions about my character. After a few sessions, another player asked the DM for permission to make changes to my character, and the DM said yes. Nobody asked me. I was just informed that I had to choose new spells, and in-game, I never got to actually play my character. Everyone else got their roleplay in as loudly as possible, and ran right over everything I tried to do. The DM frequently ignored my attempts or accepted someone else's play, and then told me what my character was doing. I've never felt so left out among my favorite people. I went home crying after many sessions, and none of it was fun. Is this normal? Is this how D&D groups are? Or is this just really rude behavior, and they ought to know better? No, that is not what D&D is supposed to be like. And yes, the other players ought to know better. It sounds like they are taking all of OP's character autonomy away, and basically telling them how to play their character, and what their character would do. Almost like an NPC, played by everyone at the table. My advice would be to talk to the players above table about how this is making the game not fun for you, and how it's making you feel. Perhaps they are just taking the reins for OP, since they are new to D&D, and they think they are helping, when they are actually doing the opposite. With any luck, they will listen to OP, and give them more control on what their character does in game. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, especially if you listened to Nipsey and liked and shared the video. And may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.